I'm Nurmai Sarah Izati and I'm going to present about the issues raised in the given situation. In the given scenario, there are several parties involved in the legal proceedings, and the main issues to be considered are non-delegable duty of care and joint tortfeasors. For non-delegable duty of care, the question of whether liability should be confined to the initial two defendants and the first and the second defendants, based on the existence of a non-delegable duty of care, needs to be addressed. A non-delegable duty of care means that the responsibility for ensuring a certain standard of care cannot be transferred or delegated to others. In this case, the plaintiffs allege negligence on the part for the first and second defendants as employers, claiming a failure to adequately supervise or rectify the actions of the independent contractor, the fourth defendant. The court will need to determine whether the duty of care in this situation is non-delegable and whether the first and second defendants can be held solely responsible. Next would be joint tortfeasors. The issue of whether liability is jointly shared by all remaining defendants viewed as joint tortfeasors also requires consideration. Joint tortfeasors are parties who act together to commit a tort. The evidence provided by two experts during the court's proceedings implicates the fourth and fifth defendants is causing the loss and damage sustained by the plaintiffs. Additionally, the failure of the first and second defendants to supervise and monitor the fourth and fifth defendants is highlighted. The court will need to assess whether the actions or omissions of all the remaining defendants collectively contributed to the damage and whether they should be held jointly liable. The court will likely examine the specific roles and responsibilities of each defendant, the evidence presented by the experts, and any contractual or legal obligations that may impact the determination of liability. The outcome may involve apportioning responsibility among the defendants based on their respective contributions to the harm suffered by the plaintiffs. It's important to note that legal outcomes can be highly fact-specific, and the resolution of these issues will depend on the specific details presented during the court proceedings.
Hello, my name is Katrina Nishana Kasi, and today I will be presenting on the comparison between the law and application grounds related to the negligence. The first law is the duty of care in construction. This means that contractor indemnity against loss and or damage under Clause 18.2 PAM Contract 2018 with quantities. The contractor is responsible and must compensate for any harm, cause, legal responsibility, loss, complaint, or legal action resulting from the loss or damage of any kind to any property, whether it's building or personal belongings. This responsibility applies when the loss or damage happens during the construction works and is a result of contractor's negligence, mistakes, failure to do something, or breaking the terms of the contract. The application in this case, based on above clause, it is stated that it is the responsibility of the contractor to compensate for the various consequences arising from the property damage during the execution of the works, especially since during the court's proceeding, evidence provided by the two experts revealed that the loss and damage sustained by the plaintiff were caused by the acts and omission of the contractor. Also, the damage clearly could have been avoided if only the civil engineer do their work properly, since it is reasonable foresee where demolition can cause visible cracks on the bungalow structure and a large hole in the garden area can cause damage to the property of the plaintiff, since it is a joint three-story bungalow where, according to the neighborhood principle, the civil engineer would be at fault for that. Hence, the first and the second defendant are also at fault because they failed to supervise and monitor both contractor and civil engineer. The second law is breach of duty and standard of care. Under this law, professionals such as civil engineer in this case have a duty to provide services with a certain standard of care. If they deviate from the standard and it results in harm or loss to their clients, it may be considered a breach of duty and they could be held liable for negligence. In general situation, the standard of care is often based on what a reasonable person would do under similar circumstances. It takes into account the level of caution and prudence that an average person would exercise to prevent harm or injury. For the application, the construction industry has established standards of care regarding building codes, safety regulations, and industry best practices. A breach of these standards may constitute negligence, which in this case, the civil engineer is responsible to make sure the contractor demolished the building using the industry best practices and safety regulation, but they did not, which lead to damages to the property of the neighbor. Hence, the civil engineer could be held liable for negligence. The first and second defendant does not have any particular skill such as possessed by civil engineer, architects, or contractor. However, they should act as the man of omnibus, whereby they have the knowledge to know that it is their right to supervise the work of the contractor and civil engineer. The first and second defendant should have reminded the contractor and civil engineer to consider the likelihood of harm and potential of harm to the neighbor's property. The third law is the causation in construction claim. In the context of construction claims, causation refers to the connection between a specific event or action and the resulting damage or harm. It involves demonstrating that a particular cause directly led to the claim loss or problem. Establishing causation is a crucial element in construction claims as it helps determine responsibility and liability for the issues raised. This is especially important in construction cases where multiple parties may be involved. The application for this law is the cause in this scenario is the actions or decision made by the civil engineer or contractor during the construction project involving construction defects, which could be linked to the damage caused. As a result of demolishing an existing structure and erect two-story superstructure above the three-story existing bungalow, it is substantially damaged plaintiff's property. They should have foreseen that when demolition is done to join building, it will directly affect the whole building. The actions of the civil engineer and contractor to demolish the building without precaution is the primary and exclusive factor in causing the harm. This demonstrates the negligence and breach of duty. In this case, establishing causation becomes vital for the plaintiff to seek compensation for the damage caused to their property, and it forms the basis for legal claims.
My name is Nurul Ashura, and next I will discuss about the damages in construction negligence. In terms of law, damages, as they relate to construction negligence, are the monetary recompense that an aggrieved party may be entitled to if another party's negligent acts or omissions cause them injury or losses. Damages can take various forms, and the goal is to restore the injured party to the position they would have been in had the negligence not occurred. Some common types of damages in construction negligence are compensatory damages, direct cause consequential damages, property damage, general damages, personal injuries, emotional distress, and punitive damages, liquidated damages, professional liability damages, loss of use damages, and legal fees and costs. For the application for damages in construction negligence typically involves legal proceedings where the injured party, which is plaintiffs A and B, seeks compensation from the party responsible for the negligence, which is all defendants. The application for damages is a formal request to the court or an alternative dispute resolution ADR forum to award financial compensation to the injured party for the losses and harm suffered due to construction negligence. In this case, plaintiffs A and B can make an application for damages where the defendant's work affect their property. The claim is formed by the plaintiff's legal team, detailing the type and degree of losses incurred. In this, the money losses, physical harm, property damage, and other damages brought on by the construction carelessness are described. And for the last is foreseeability in construction safety. In terms of law, for this, the capacity to anticipate and predict probable risks and hazards connected with construction operations is referred to as foreseeability in the context of construction safety. It involves identifying and understanding potential dangers in advance so that appropriate measures can be taken to prevent accidents and ensure a safe working environment. For the application, in the event that an accident happens and a construction manager is aware of potentially dangerous circumstances on the site but chooses not to take action, their inability to anticipate and reduce the risk might be cited as negligence. In the given case, The defendants might know that the possibility of crack happens higher as the bungalow are jointed together. The civil engineer, which is the fifth defendant, or the expertise of these foreseeable damages, where he is the one that responsible with this case. Other than that, the plaintiff can claim the defendants under proximate cause, where establishing proximate causation requires demonstrating foreseeability, which connects the defendant's deeds or inaction to the harm that results. The case for proximate causation is strengthened if it was foreseeable that the defendant's action would result in damage.
My name is Nadira binti Sam and I'm going to present on the analysis of the case. The first argument in this case is non-delegable duty of care. Non-delegable duty of care refers to a legal obligations that cannot be transferred or delegated to another party. This means that the person who owes the duty of care cannot avoid the responsibility by assigning it to someone else. In the given case, the employer had a non-delegable duty of care as they failed to supervise and monitor the actions of the independent contractor. The first and second defendant are the ones who give instructions to the independent contractor to do the task. This means they have the duty of care to ensure the safety of the site and damages of the property were foreseeable as it was adjoining property. Based on the precedent's case, the court found that the defendant owed a non-delegable duty of care to the plaintiff. The court determined that the defendants already know that they were under duty of care, which is to prevent the damages to the mansion during their piling works. However, they still continued to proceed with their works where they employed the hydraulic piling method, which caused excessive damages to the mansion. In this case, the damages was foreseeable as they already know that the walls of the mansion were non-reinforced load-bearing masonry, which is sensitive to the ground movement. Therefore, from the analysis of the precedent's case, the first and second defendant were found guilty for non-delegable duty of care as the damages were foreseeable. The next argument is negligence. Negligence refers to a failure to exercise the appropriate duty of care which result in damage or injury. In the given case, the plaintiff claimed negligence against the first and second defendant, while focusing on their illegal failure to educate, supervise, or rectifying the actions of the independent contractor, which resulted in damages to the plaintiff property. In this case, the first and second defendant are known as the employer, and at the same time, they failed to obligate their duty. This shows that they have breached the duty of care as they did not supervise the independent contractor, which led to damages. Based on the precedent's case, the plaintiff claim of negligence was supported by the assertions that the defendant had not only failed to adopt an appropriate piling system to avoid vibrations and crack, but also neglected to comply with the standard practices in building operations to prevent damages to the mansion. From the analysis, the plaintiff can claim for negligence as the defendant have breached the duty of care, which caused the negligence to happen and lead to damages of the property next to them. Next is the act and omissions of fourth and fifth defendant. From the given case, it was stated that the evidence provided by the expert revealed that the loss and damages sustained by the plaintiff were caused by the act and omissions of the fourth and fifth defendant. In this case, the fourth defendant is the independent contractor and the fifth defendant is the civil engineer. The independent contractor is the one who constructed the project. However, they still act on continuing the work although they know that the damage is going to happen. As it was adjoining property, it is difficult to ensure that there is no damage will happen to the next property, especially in the works of demolition. Meanwhile, in the case of fifth defendant, there is the one who will ensure the suitability of the structure on the land. As a civil engineer, they should be the one who know the damages will occur, as it was their professions, but they just let the independent contractor to do their works. Lastly, joint tortfeasors. Joint tortfeasors refers to two or more parties who are held liable for the same tortious act. These parties may have acted together to cause harm to others. In the given situations, the court need to consider whether the liability should be confined to the two initial defendants or whether the liability should be jointly shared by all remaining defendants as joint tortfeasors. In this case, the first and second defendant failed to comply with their capacity as employer, which is to supervise and rectify the actions of the independent contractor. However, during the court proceeding, evidence provided by two experts revealed that the loss and damages sustained by the plaintiff were caused by the act and omissions of the fourth and fifth defendant, and also the failure of the first and second defendant to supervise and monitor the fourth and fifth defendant to remedy the resultant damage. As court has the evidence from the expert, it shows that all of the defendants have been found guilty in joint tortfeasors, and the liability should be jointly shared by all remaining defendants.
Hello, my name is Nuriza Izati, and I will be presenting on findings. In this case, we recommend that the liability for jointly shared by all remaining defendants viewed as joint tortfeasors. We found that the demolition works carried out by the remaining defendants, as instructed by the defendant, caused damage to the plaintiff bungalow structure. As a result, the fourth and fifth defendants are held liable to indemnify the defendant for the damages arising from the demolition works. Therefore, the defendants was considered a tortfeasors in this case, and its liability was established based on the damages caused by its actions. Furthermore, in this case, negligence was a key aspect of the plaintiff claim. The plaintiff alleged that the defendant had failed to adopt an appropriate system of demolition works to avoid visible cracks in the bungalow structure and a large hole in the garden area, and had neglected to comply with standard practices in building operations to prevent damage to the property. The plaintiff's argument was grounded in the principles of negligence, which holds that a party is under a duty of care to prevent harm that is reasonably foreseeable to their neighbor. The plaintiff contended that the defendant knew or ought to have known that their conduct could result in harm to the plaintiff property, and therefore they were negligent in their actions. Hence, the plaintiff can make several claims against the defendant, including general damages. The plaintiff may claim general damages for the harm caused to their property due to the defendant's alleged negligence in demolition works. General damages are typically awarded to compensate for the nuisance or negligence caused to them or their property. Second, special damages. The plaintiff also can claim special damages for the specific financial losses they incurred due to the damage to their property. Special damages are awarded to compensate for losses that can be precisely calculated, such as lost income and property damage. And the third one is professional fees. The plaintiff may claim professional fees incurred in monitoring and assessing the damage to their property during the defendant's demolition works, and the cost of rectification and repair of the damage caused by the defendant's action. That's all from us. Thank you.